Her message wasn't supposed to reach me. I was leaning against the counter, absently rolling my silver compass keychain in my palm, when the notification flashed across my phone screen. No name. Just a preview of words that froze me mid-breath. He doesn't suspect. Tonight should be smooth. I tapped it open before I could think. The thread was short, clipped sentences, almost like stage directions. Nothing dramatic, nothing concrete, just enough to feel intentional, enough to feel wrong. For a moment, I convinced myself it was a misfire, some scheduling note meant for a coworker. But then my chest tightened, because the wording wasn't sterile like a work plan. It was intimate, too casual, too knowing. The kind of shorthand people use when they've already rehearsed the context. The kitchen light buzzed faintly overhead, humming against the silence in my head. I read the message 3 times, searching for something to anchor it to, some harmless explanation. There wasn't one. The compass keychain pressed into my skin as I gripped it tighter, its edge leaving a faint mark on my palm. She had given it to me years ago, in one of those moments that felt innocent back then. "So you always find your way back to me," she'd said, slipping it into my hand with a smile. Tonight it felt like a joke with a sharp edge. I didn't move right away. My first instinct wasn't confrontation, or anger, or even denial. It was silence. A heavy, deliberate silence. The kind that fills a room when you realize something fragile has just cracked, and you don't know yet if you're holding the broken piece or if it's already cut you. Her footsteps echoed from the hallway. I locked the screen without thinking and slipped the phone face down on the counter. She walked in with her hair still damp from the shower, scrolling her own device like oxygen flowed through the glass. She didn't look at me when she asked if I'd eaten. My throat caught around the answer. I said yes, even though the untouched plate on the table said otherwise. She nodded absently, moved past me, and the faint scent of her shampoo lingered. I stared at the compass keychain again. Its surface warped my reflection in miniature, distorted, unrecognizable, like the man holding it wasn't the same one she'd once promised direction to. I wanted to ask her right then. Wanted to drop the phone on the counter and let the message speak for itself. But instead I stood in place, listening to the sound of water running as she filled a glass at the sink. The words of that text echoed in my head. He doesn't suspect. She turned, smiled faintly, and asked if I'd seen her charger. My mouth moved, but the words didn't carry. She didn't notice. She was already walking down the hallway, her voice fading as she called back. "Found it." I stayed behind, the compass clenched in my fist. It was supposed to guide me back to her, but tonight, it felt like it was pointing anywhere but home. She came back with the charger and that weightless smile, set it down, and flipped her phone face down beside mine. The movement was small, practiced, like a curtain drawn with 2 fingers. I rolled the silver compass keychain across my knuckles and watched the brushed metal catch the light. It didn't point anywhere, it just reflected me back in a warped circle I barely recognized. Her quiet began to acquire rules. Calls migrated to the stair landing where the banister cut sidelines. Laughter stopped at thresholds, then restarted when doors clicked shut. The soft blue of focus glowed on her lock screen during dinner. A tiny moon that meant I was no longer a priority notification. Read receipts vanished. A new passcode rhythm replaced the old one. Short, long. Like a drum pattern only she was allowed to hear. She wore her weekend perfume on weeknights, shrugged when I noticed and said, "Felt like it," eyes already drifting past me. I told myself to wait for context. The house offered evidence instead. On her laptop, an open tab flashed, a corner of a shared cloud folder that wasn't hers, then disappeared under a rapid keystroke. An email slid into my inbox. "Your file permissions were updated." No author listed. The activity log showed tiny edits that felt like needles. My budget draft retitled, "House Guide." A personal note moved into a fresh folder called Household. 2 links switched from private to anyone with link. The creator looked like an old side account I knew she'd use for coupons and free trials. A careful shadow. When I asked what her week looked like, she consulted a calendar I didn't have access to and said work had picked up. Then she added casually, "You're at the office late Tuesday, right?" Her fingertip traced the rim of her glass while she spoke, a slow circle that didn't match the light in her voice. I nodded because it was usually true, and because I wanted to see what she did with the space. On day 5 I tested a theory. I turned off link sharing on a single document, an old client letter, and waited. 10 minutes later came the ping. "Access request received." No name. Just that anonymous side account again. The compass on the counter spun when I brushed it, a small orbit that steadied me more than I wanted to admit. Her posts went aspirational. A photo of a half-open door with a caption about releasing control. Mutuals applauded with heart emojis that cost nothing. A cousin texted to ask if we were good. I told him yes. He sent a thumbs up and changed the subject. The silence afterward felt like a verdict no one wanted to read aloud. She carried a tote now, charger, lip balm, a paperback, receipts stamped by stores across town. She started pre-washing dishes she used to leave soaking, wiping the faucet dry as if cleanliness could erase intent. At night, she took calls on the balcony with her back to the glass, shoulders lifted just enough to suggest cold even when the air was warm. When I stepped into view, her laugh shortened by half a beat and thinned to a whisper. Another email. New sign-in detected. The city wasn't ours. The timestamp matched her milk run, the one that returned oat substitute, and a podcast recap delivered like a smoke screen. In my drafts, a message I hadn't written waited unsent to a mutual friend who loved being in the know. The phrasing wore her fingerprints. We're recalibrating. He's pouring into work. I'm prioritizing voice. Not my tone. Not my punctuation. But my account. I changed passwords in a calm, methodical sweep. Not panic, procedure. I left one gate ajar on purpose to see if the pattern had intent. The log recorded an entry between her shower and the moment she asked if I'd seen her headphones. I said no. She smiled with her mouth, not her eyes, and the space between us shortened without either of us stepping. By day 10, our kitchen felt like an airport lounge, clean, bright, full of departures. She set her phone in the same place each night, face down on a folded napkin, as if even the counter couldn't be trusted to touch it. The compass keychain rested beside it like a cheap planet shadowing a private sun. When I lifted my keys, the metal left a faint circle on the napkin, a watermark of attention I no longer received. She suggested drinks on Friday to celebrate a coworker's promotion. It'll be good for you to get out, she said, topping off my water like a bartender who'd already closed the tab. I asked who'd be there. She shrugged lightly and said the usual, eyes cutting toward the door as if rehearsing exits. I tried one more gate. A collaborative playlist we'd built years ago, quietly renamed by someone to reset. The songs leaned into anthems about growth and distance, then dissolved into instrumentals where no one had to sing. Under her post about boundaries, a stranger praised her clarity. She replied with a heart and a leaf. No mention of me, only the outline where I used to stand. By day 15, our conversations were immaculate summaries. Weather, delivery windows, dry cleaning. She asked if I could pick up lemons. I did. She wrote a list with tidy loops: spinach, lemons, patience. I wasn't sure if she intended the last word or if my mind supplied it because it fit. The compass waited on the counter when I returned, right where I'd left it, as if it wanted to know whether I still remembered the way back. Friday approached like a held breath. She adjusted her coat in the mirror and said we should drive separately. It's easier, she added, already checking the time. She tapped her face-down phone twice, a small drumroll, and slipped it into her bag without looking at the screen. I pocketed the compass and felt its weight settle. Somewhere in the cloud, a folder I didn't name kept collecting pieces of me. Somewhere at that bar, varnish would thin, and a tongue would outrun judgment. I opened the door and let the night decide whose story would slip first. The bar sat under tired skylights, music low enough to hear glass scrape glass. She picked a corner with easy exits. I set my keys down. The silver compass keychain threw a coin of light that got noticed before I did. She hovered near chairs, phone half hidden. When it buzzed, she bent toward it. I watched patterns, not faces. After the cheer faded, a coworker I barely knew, Maya, reached for a lime wedge and clipped the compass with her bracelet. It chimed. Cute, she said, then too quickly. Fitting. Fitting how? I kept it mild. Her eyes bounced from me to my wife and back. You know, finding your way. She folded her napkin and sank it under her glass. Across the table, my wife nodded through a story about deadlines and flipped her phone face down. A banner flashed an instant before, the cloud service we shared. My pocket buzzed. Your file permissions were updated. I didn't check. Maya softened around her drink. She's been so private lately, she said to no one in particular. Funny, considering who she's with. The line popped, loud enough to mark the table. I studied the citrus oil on my fingers. She's focused, I said. The word worked like a lid. Another vibration, new sign-in detected, different device. Timestamps forming a pattern. At the bar, my wife ordered for me without asking and slid the glass to my left hand. Loosen up, she said, bumping my shoulder. Her phone buzzed. She smiled down at it the way people smile at toddlers learning to walk. The promoted coworker, warm with gratitude, bent to thank me. She was right, he said, almost conspiratorial. You've been heads down. Gives her room for late meetups. He heard himself and tried to polish it. Mentoring. Vendor stuff. She's a rock. Of course, I said. Maya reappeared with a new drink and a smaller voice. Ignore me earlier, she said. 2 drinks turns me into headlines. It happens, I told her. By the time the bill arrived, coats were on chairs. She slid her card in without looking, then tucked her phone behind it. I'll meet you outside, she said, a quick squeeze at my elbow. Our old signal for we're fine. It sounded pre-recorded. My phone lit again. Another access request, this time for a folder no one needed unless they were drafting a version of me I hadn't approved. I let it through. Not permission data. She met me on the sidewalk. Fun, she said into her scarf. You okay? Long week, I answered. She searched my face and eased. You're in early tomorrow? She asked, eyes on the lot. Probably. She lifted her keys. Don't wait up, she said. I watched taillights fold into traffic. The compass pressed a circle into my thigh. At home, her toe waited on the entry table, half-zipped, a corner of her tablet peeking out. The screen pulsed with sleep mode. The case sat askew, like someone had closed it mid-thought. I set my keys beside it. I moved the tote. The tablet woke under my fingers, lock screen bright as a match head. Preview banners slid across the top. Names I didn't recognize. A thread title I'd seen scroll past earlier. My thumb hovered and stopped. Not yet. I placed it back and watched the dark glass hold my reflection beside the ghost of hers. 2 shapes with more space between them than angle could explain. Somewhere on a server, a side account kept inching my documents into open rooms. I switched off the hall light and let the house settle. The entry light clicked off. Her toe waited. The tablet kept a faint print of her palm. I set my keys beside it. The silver compass slid and settled against the case. This wasn't curiosity. She'd stepped through my gates, silence first, then my files. I lifted the cover. No passcode. A swipe, then messages. A pinned thread with a leaf icon sat on top. Not a name, a slogan. Quiet wins. Inside, lines stacked. My name appeared in shorthand, the way people talk when they want the person absent. Near the top she forwarded a screenshot from my account, an old draft labeled Q4 plan. Her caption. You won't notice if this goes public. A plant emoji user answered. Reframe as household transparency. Another. Narrative first. If he pushes back, call it control. Heat rose, then leveled. Not rage, recognition. Farther down, a second thread carried late-night timestamps. The sentence that hit my phone sat intact. He doesn't suspect. Tonight should be smooth. Replies were soft, nothing explicit, nothing innocent. You're safe here, one wrote. I'll keep the door. Another. A banner slid across the top. Access granted? The gate I'd left ajar had swung wider. She was inside my documents while I was in her messages. A contact icon stopped me. Her sister's avatar smiled from the corner of the group. She'd sent a heart and a line like strategy in soft clothes. Don't over-explain, own the frame. A co-worker from the bar, Maya, had reacted with a checkmark. Another chat newer. After 9. A pulsing location bubble. Somewhere else. Her line read like choreography. Short window. If he's at the office, I'll swing by. No posts. The compass ticked because my hand had started to shake. I kept scrolling to map exits. Screenshots of my calendar. A photo of the travel bag with essentials she once called my panic kit. Captioned. He's dramatic but predictable. Links, podcasts on. Self-actualization. Articles on. Narrative control. A note titled, What to Say When He Asks? I opened it. Bullets. You've been distant. I felt invisible. We both lost the thread. Not technically false, never wholly true. Another banner. New sign-in documents. City, not ours. I photographed the screen. The compass flashed in the corner. Headlights brushed the blinds. I set the tablet where I found it, and wiped the ring my keys left. She came in, keys in one hand, takeout in the other, and pitched her voice bright. You up? She saw the compass, then me. Ran into some of the team, she said. Good to see friends, I answered. She cracked chopsticks and studied the splintered edge. Her phone buzzed. Spam, she said, flipping it face down. A minute later my phone lit. Your document house guide was moved. I poured water. You're distant, she said. I've been watching, I said. She nodded. Let's not do this at midnight. She set out boxes. We ate without ceremony. When the containers were empty, she stacked them with precision that read like apology without the word. Early day, she said. You. Same. In bed, I held the compass like a word I wasn't ready to say. The needle didn't point, it floated. I made the one decision I had left. I wasn't asking a script to justify itself. Morning would bring faces that looked away too fast and a sister keeping her glass pinned to the table. The center had moved. My job wasn't to drag it back. It was to mark where it had landed. Morning didn't clear anything. It sharpened it. She made coffee with practiced calm, measure, pour, wipe. I clipped the silver compass to my belt loop so its weight could argue with the stories gathering around me. My brother called on his commute. Usually a joke, today a pause. You good? He asked. I said we were fine. He exhaled. Just don't make anything public, he murmured, then switched to football. Confirmation by omission. An email waited. Your folder house guide was shared with family group. My drafts, budget, travel, repairs, reorganized for an audience. Inside, her notes in a reasonable tone. We've both been distant, trying to align goals. Her sister hearted it and added a line from her script file. Own the frame. And uncle typed, proud of you too. That evening we ate with her parents. Her mother coached. It's easy to pour into work and forget home. I set my keys down. The compass caught the candle and spun light across the table. The sister's eyes flicked to it like she'd been waiting for it to accuse her. My phone buzzed under the linen. New sign-in documents. Location matched the restaurant's Wi-Fi. I looked up. She laughed with the server about an appetizer we didn't order, phone by her elbow. On the drive home she hummed an old playlist. Your brother called me, she said, small smile at the windshield. He's concerned. People notice when you close off. The compass tapped the console with each seam in the road. I said I'd call him back. Back inside, the activity log showed dots pacing familiar rooms. The side account had renamed one of my notes to something gentler. Vision, her comment read. Sharing for transparency. Replies arrived fast and warm. No one asked why my voice appeared without me. My mother texted. She reached out. Said you're recalibrating. Proud of you for working. The word proud landed wrong. By midweek a friend forwarded a story she'd posted and deleted, captioned, New chapter, boundaries, and a colleague messaged, Everything good at home? She mentioned your heads down. I typed, all good, erased it, sent, dialed in. That afternoon a letter arrived. We received your request to update contact preferences. No account named, just a reference number and a cheerful footer. Not forging, not yet, just the sound of hinges loosening. I set the envelope beside the compass. She proposed game night to get back to normal. People came, left shoes at the door and opinions on the mat. In the kitchen, the sister orbited my corner without landing. When laughter swelled, she looked at me, then at my wife. A small nod passed like a baton. My pocket hummed. Your calendar was shared. Audience secured. I collected dishes while she told a story about choosing resilience. The compass kissed a glass with a soft ring only I seemed to hear. Guests hugged, offered tidy wisdom. When the lock clicked, she touched my wrist, light as hypothesis. That felt good, she said. Like we're aligned. I let the word hang until it cooled. Upstairs I exported logs, timestamped changes, and mapped what I could prove against what everyone had decided to believe. The stakes weren't a cliff, they were a tide. Friends and family watched the water rise and complimented the moon. In that flood, I held a small bright instrument pretending to know north, and tried to remember the last time it was right. The envelope came on a Thursday, thin enough to seem harmless. I almost left it on the counter unopened, but the return address was our bank. The compass keychain pressed a circle into my palm as I slid it open. Inside, polite lines informed me of updated contact details and signatures on file. My name appeared with one letter transposed, my handwriting forged into loops I'd never drawn. Beneath, a line read, Authorized by joint account holder. I stared at the page while the refrigerator hummed like static. She breezed in, coat still on, and saw it in my hand. Mail? She asked, dropping her tote by the door. Her eyes flicked to the compass on the counter, then back to my face. Statement, I said. My voice didn't shake, but the compass did when I set it down. That night, when she showered, I opened my email. 2 new alerts. Contact information updated. Beneficiaries amended. Both carried timestamps matching when she claimed she'd been at yoga. Screenshots slid into my private archive, evidence piling like sediment. The next morning she kissed my cheek, lips cool, and said, Don't stress, Bills, I handled updates. She tapped her phone, screen turned away. My own device buzzed at the same time, news sign undetected. Location, not her office. Later, I drove to the branch. The clerk studied the file, hesitated, then whispered, "It looks authorized." She lowered her eyes. "People adjust arrangements all the time." Her tone said she knew more but wouldn't say it. At dinner with friends that weekend, she raised a toast about shared trust. Her glass caught the chandelier. My compass lay heavy in my pocket. Someone asked how we kept things so aligned. She smiled, touched my arm. "Systems," she said. The words sat between us like a dare. I found the real system that night. On her tablet, tucked into cloud folders she thought were hidden, sat a subdirectory titled Foundations. Inside, PDFs with names like transfer steps and account control. One file contained a template for moving assets quietly. Another listed phrases to disarm objections. Highlighted in yellow. If challenged, frame it as responsibility. At the bottom of one document, her handwriting filled the margins. Compass, symbol, trust story. She'd tagged it as a reminder, maybe for herself, maybe for the narrative she was rehearsing. The keychain that once meant home had become a prop in her manual. The air in the room thinned. I closed the tablet and slipped the compass from my pocket onto the desk. Its face reflected back my outline, bent and distorted. North meant nothing now. The needle floated without anchor, the same way my name drifted across documents in handwriting not mine. When she came in later, brushing her hair, she glanced at the desk. "Forgot you work tonight," she said, tone light, as if forgetting were harmless. Her hand hovered over the compass for a moment, then pulled back. She kissed my forehead. "Sleep," she whispered. But I didn't. I lay awake cataloging every signature, every document, every edit to my history. She wasn't just reshaping our present, she was rewriting my name into future tense, without asking if I wanted to exist there. And in that realization, the betrayal shifted. It wasn't about distance anymore. It was about erasure, slow and procedural, signed in strokes I never made. I let the evidence pile quietly, grain by grain. Screenshots, logs, altered forms, each piece sharper than the last. The compass keychain lived in my pocket, a weight reminding me not to confuse silence with surrender. The opportunity arrived on its own. A weekend brunch she insisted on hosting, the kind where friends filled chairs with laughter rehearsed for social feeds. She dressed carefully, phone clutched like an accessory, her totes staged at the corner of the table. I sat opposite, ordered coffee black, and waited. She leaned into conversations with practiced warmth, sprinkling phrases from her script: boundaries, resilience, shared goals. Heads nodded. Her sister smiled like a co-conspirator. When the plates arrived, I set my keys on the table. The compass caught the light, spinning slightly in the hum of the air conditioner. She noticed but didn't flinch. That was when I slid the envelope forward, bank statement on top, my name misspelled, her looping signature below. Her fork paused midair. Around us, chatter dulled to a hush. She pressed her lips together, glanced at the paper, then back at me. "What's this?" she asked, tone too calm, the kind people use when they want the room to believe they're in control. "You tell me," I said. A friend leaned closer, curiosity breaking etiquette. Her sister's glass froze halfway to her lips. I tapped the signature with one finger. "Not mine," I added low, but enough for the circle to hear. Her hand drifted to her phone like it might rescue her. She laughed once too bright. "Administrative error," she said. "Happens all the time." The silence disagreed. Someone's knife scraped china. A cough. The compass on the table wobbled, needle twitching as if trying to orient the moment. I pulled a second page free, a log of digital access, time-stamped with her exact yoga class. "Error?" I asked. Her mouth opened, then closed. A flush climbed her neck. She looked to her sister, but no line arrived to save her. "You forged documents," I said, still calm. "You staged my name into your plan." The word forged landed heavy. Fork stilled. Friends stared at their plates, anywhere but her. She swallowed, eyes wet but not from regret. "You're overreacting," she whispered. I leaned back, folded the papers neatly, and returned them to the envelope. "I'm not reacting at all," I said. The table broke into nervous movement. Chairs shifted. Someone asked for the check early. My wife pressed her napkin flat, knuckles white. As we walked out, she hissed under her breath, "You humiliated me." "No," I said, slipping the compass back into my pocket. "You did that yourself." She drove home in silence, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the road. I didn't argue. I let the truth ride in the passenger seat, heavier than either of us. By the time we pulled into the driveway, she was already rehearsing her next move. I could see it in the way her fingers drummed the steering wheel, tapping out another script. But the compass in my pocket reminded me, direction had shifted, and control was no longer hers to write. We pulled into the driveway with the engine ticking like an anxious clock. She stayed behind the wheel a beat too long, thumbs hovering over the screen as if the right sentence could rewind brunch. Inside, the house felt sanitized, surfaces wiped, air scrubbed of anything that could be called context. I set my keys down. The silver compass keychain made a small, decisive sound against the counter. "I was trying to protect us," she said finally, arms crossed in a posture that looked like warmth from a distance. "You staged that scene to make me look reckless." I opened the fridge, let the cold air touch my face, and closed it again. "You forged my name," I said. My voice stayed low. Her eyes flicked to the papers under my arm like they might still learn a gentler ending. "I adjusted what you ignored," she countered, stepping closer. "Don't make this public. We can recover." The word recover felt like a brand slogan. She reached for my wrist. I let the moment pass me the way you let a train pass when you're on the wrong platform. I didn't pack loudly. I moved through rooms like a list I'd already written: passport, documents, the encrypted drive with logs and screenshots, a spare card, 2 shirts, 1 sweater, charger, spare keys. The travel bag with essentials had lived at the back of the closet for years, a joke she used when friends said they envied our spontaneity. Tonight, it wasn't a joke. She trailed me down the hall, voice softening and hardening in alternating waves. "You're acting out of pride," she said then. "You're being unfair." And finally, a whisper shaped like sympathy. "You've been distant. I felt invisible." Bullets from the note in her tablet, now delivered in person. I folded a shirt, slid it into the bag, and zipped without answering. There are conversations that exist only to harvest sound. I wasn't giving her that crop. In the office, I sat at the desk and began the part that mattered to me: revoking access, rotating keys, ending shares she'd opened under my name. Tokens blinked out. The family group lost visibility. The house guide reverted to private, then to archive. I watched each change register in the activity log like a tidy obituary. When I reached the bank portal, I added new verifications, flagged the forged update, and scheduled a call with a human I would meet in person. No threats. No theater. Just the math of separation. Her sister texted while I worked, "She's upset. Handle this like adults." I archived it. A friend DM'd, careful and neutral. Heard brunch was tense. "You okay?" I set the phone face down without answering. The room held its breath. I let it. She appeared at the doorway, eyes glassed with a kind of urgency that wasn't about me. "Let's talk tomorrow. We can issue a joint statement so no one misreads this." She had moved from us to optics without touching consequence. I powered down the laptop, slid the drive into my pocket, and stood. At the counter, I placed my house keys on the folded napkin where she used to park her phone. The compass keychain stayed in my hand. It was the last thing I added to the bag, its weight small, its meaning empty. She noticed. "You're taking that?" she asked, almost smiling at the symmetry. "You gave it to me," I said. "You can keep the story." I left no note. Notes become exhibits. Exhibits become scripts. The door clicked behind me with the soft authority of a decision that doesn't need applause. I drove without the radio, letting the city slide off like a coat I'd outgrown. Back roads braided into highway, then into a frontage road where the motel sign hummed like a patient machine. In the room, I didn't collapse. I set the bag on the chair, wiped the table, opened my laptop, and finished the last of the digital exits. New number. New alias for bills. Camera access reset. Every shared calendar detached. The folder where she'd been curating a gentler version of me dissolved to an error screen. Not vengeance, accuracy. Her calls arrived in stacked tones, concern, then offense, then a polished remorse I recognized from her templates. I let them pile into voicemail like receipts to a place I wouldn't visit again. A final text landed at 1:13 a.m. "We can fix this if you come home." The word home didn't match the address. I slept as if the bed had been waiting for exactly this wait. Morning came clean. I drove to the bank, then to the box office that printed a new PO key without commentary. The clerk slid it across the counter, and I slid cash back. No ceremony, just logistics. By midday, I had a temporary lease on a quiet place where no one rehearsed anything. I placed the compass in the drawer, face down, so it wouldn't reflect me by accident. On my way out for coffee, I muted her thread, then her sister's, then the group that had applauded her. Boundaries. Silence landed like fresh snow, soft, absolute, covering everything that didn't require footprints. She wanted a scene to rebut, A monologue to interrupt, an enemy to highlight. I left her with blank space and a door that would never swing in. She can keep the audience. I took away the stage.